the judge.
Yeah, I see her online. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Hey, there's the judge, dude.
All right, we are on the air, everyone, for our work session. Counselor Savage Jordan is not with us for this, but everyone else is here. We're starting relatively on time for us, so good. We do have a lot on our agenda. And so we'll start with Mayor Graves and the municipal court update, and she's with us online.
It's nice that you've named her mayor today.
Oh,
I saw that I was promoted to a panelist. I thought I was really promoted. Hi, I know you have a lot on your agenda, so I will keep mine short. On my list here, I have the exciting news category, which is exciting for me because interpreters are always hard to come by. And we've been looking for, I should say Mary has been looking diligently for an ASL interpreter. And we have found one that can assist us in court, which is a big win when we're trying to make sure that there's equal access for everyone. And ASL interpreters are hard to find.
Do you have a lot of need for one? Or how often do you have need for one?
Not often.
No.
But it is nice to have those names kind of in the back pocket for when it does come up. And that was one that we just hadn't had on our list. So we'll be able to use them for the current defendant that needs the assistance, but we also have the name going forward. And then a couple of my other categories, changes or things coming up at court. We started as a court of record not too long after I became the judge, so probably 2015. Which means our equipment and our processes for recording hearings are the same from then. And for the record, folks are changing to a cloud-based service now, which will be, I think, a vast improvement for how the recordings are all held at this time. And so we'll be looking at switching over to that cloud-based service, hopefully sometime in the next year. And along with that, we will hopefully have an equipment update as well, since of course we've had the same equipment for 10 years. But that'll come down to what it looks like cost-wise, what needs to be updated, what we can still keep. But that's the ongoing conversation to make sure that our recording equipment is what we need to have in place.
I guess I never thought about it, but your equipment is different than Willamette Falls equipment that they use for recording our meetings?
Yes, our equipment is called For the Record, and everything we have equipment-wise comes from them. And then, of course, the computer program is from them as well.
And is it in the same room where Willamette Falls is set up? Or is it something you set up and take down every time?
Mary gets to set it up and take it down each court session.
Oh, wow, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Is it just audio?
And it's all about 10 years old.
Is it just audio or is it video as well?
It is just audio.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I think having the cloud storage will be probably the nicest upgrade. Not having to store everything locally and search locally. My other update for the court was that we're in the process of hiring for a new position, which will be some much needed relief. There was, of course, a COVID dip in cases, and now we are on the trajectory of back up, which means that the work at the court is moving back up as well, and workload. So I'm told job description has been submitted to HR, and the timing is based on HR's response as far as approving that description and then getting out a posting, but that should hopefully be happening in January.
I can share that has now been reviewed. Class comp was completed today. Should recruit in early Jan. So this will be, we were calling it a deputy court clerk. I think the term we've landed on is court specialist and along a court manager, but this was made possible by the public safety fee. So thank you, counsel.
Yes, it's much appreciated to share the workload a little bit in the court because Mary's fielding calls and emails, and then of course also being present in court each time we have a court session and processing all the cases as they come in, attorney requests, defendant requests. So she is fielding a lot of information. And like I said, also being in court, dealing with each court day and scheduling those sessions as well. So some much needed relief is coming, I think. And then the only other thing that I had heard of for the court, which I'm certain everyone in the room there knows more than I do, is the possibility of credit card fees coming to the court and being added on to defendants' cases and payment plans, things of that sort. Obviously, that'll be a change in the court system to add those in, but I'm sure everyone else there knows probably the process as to how we landed there and if that is for certain coming or if it's still in the thought process.
It has been voted and approved by council. Implementation has been rocky. It's been a complicated, we have to get our payment processor on board and the card companies, so it has not been implemented yet. Michael will be providing you guys an update on that in the new year. I know they had a meeting this week about implementation, but it's in the fee schedule that you have authority to charge up to a 3% convenience fee for credit card usage on things including coffee.
It's coming.
So we'll just have to work it into the court fees and
Yeah.
figure out how that will be calculated and included.
You mentioned that there's been an uptick in your caseload since COVID. Can you just tell me a little bit, like what drives your caseload? Is it mostly traffic, tickets? Is it something else?
I mean, largely traffic, of course. I have seen quite a bit more from code enforcement recently. And I think, likelihood there's probably more out there that code enforcement could be sending in, but they have a lengthy process with their cases. They do a really good job of trying to work with folks before it ever ends up in court. So I have seen more code enforcement recently, and I know that they are working on other cases. Traffic certainly increases our caseload, but also I think people, at least more recently, have been hiring attorneys. I've noticed that we have more attorney cases coming through. And those take up a little bit more time, of course, for a trial docket.
Okay. You kind of preempt my second part there. Are there trends or insights in the caseload that you think would be helpful for us to know or to think about? Especially as you mentioned, like code enforcement is increasing. I guess you speak to what's driving that, or even the trend of more attorneys coming to court. You parse through what that means for our process.
Yeah, I don't know if I could predict the reason. I assume that it's probably one of two things, excuse me. If folks are economically doing better, they have the ability to fight citations. So they might be more inclined to hire an attorney. It could also be the flip side of that, which is if they're more concerned that they are not economically stable and that this ticket could impact their job, they may be more inclined to fight it and hire an attorney to help them do that. So I think that could actually go either way. I've certainly noticed more of that over the last probably 2 to 3 months. It seems like there have been more attorney cases coming in.
Are there, I guess, in that, what's the average cost of a ticket that we're issuing for our traffic citations, or more or less?
Right, so they're all set by legislature, of course. A D violation is 115, that's the presumptive. C violation is 165, a B is 265, and an A is 440. I would say the vast majority fall in the 165 to 265 range. And reason being a failure to obey a traffic control device, so it's running a stoplight, stop sign is 265. And speeding, if you're in the 11 to 20 range, is 165. If you hit 21 to 30, then you're in the 265. And those are the majority, of course, of what we see.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
You mentioned the the fee is, the credit card fee is something coming. I assume someone's talked to you too about eventual introduction of red light cameras and speed cameras.
I have heard mutterings, but I think that that's about as far as it's gotten to me.
We also will provide in January a firmer update for that. But that at this, just for your, I'm sorry, Judge Graves, I didn't keep you more apprised, but yeah, that was kind of a part of the same kind of credit card fee conversation. So our PD has taken the lead on sort of the research into how that program will be stood up. We're hoping to do kind of RFPs for the technology in the spring and have them implemented sometime next summer. So.
Okay, then next summer timeline.
Yep.
And stationary this time, not the van.
Stationary, yep, looking at 224 and 99E.
Okay. Okay, well, that'll certainly put our new court specialist to work.
Got it. Got it.
Other
Yeah, that
questions?
timing actually sounds good for getting someone up to speed, and then obviously that increases the number of citations coming in, so the ability to process those will be much better once someone has had a little bit of time to get used to the regular court processes.
Other questions for the judge? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so
All right.
thank you for joining us. And
Of course, nice to see you all. Have wonderful holidays.
you too.
Kimberly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, so next we have the
We got a
Kellogg.
entourage, so I think mostly it's gonna be April and Karen, so maybe up here providing the
Well, I was gonna say
presentation.
Rebecca's not coming, so you can move her and one can sit there.
Neil, Shelly. And Kelly Romero, Dot is over there. Have a PowerPoint. There's PowerPoint. Andy, send it to you? Load it up over here. I can send it to you right now.
Okay, so team here, the project management team, but I'm gonna kick it to Counselor Massey, who's our rep, to the Watershed Council to sort of kick this off.
Yeah, just so you kind of understand, we have a number of goals in the city council. And so one of the goal that's been assigned to me is, spark and green space on sort of the lead on this among other issues and that kind of thing. I won't try to repeat the letter that we sent. I think that the change in administration has been sobering, to say the least. I was so excited when things seemed to have a lot of momentum, because I was telling people, I said, I don't think we'd ever get here, but now we've been hit with this big speed bump. And so we're all on board, but we just think that there's a lot more challenges than we anticipated a year ago, that kind of thing. So that's why we kind of sent you this list of 9 questions that we wanted to address. So I'll stop talking.
Yeah, and thank you for that letter. We've been looking forward to a chance to talk with you all about the project and kind of provide some updates and bring some folks up to speed. So, yes, there have been a lot of sobering changes and we are feeling pretty sober, but we also have quite a bit of money and we have enough money to take us all the way through the pre-construction activities. So we want to use that money wisely and get as much value from it as we can. So, anything else before we start? Okay. Well, I am April McEwen, so I am a Kellogg project manager, and I'm with River Electric Projects LLC, a project management consulting firm. You know me from the past. I'm working with American Rivers. I was leading their Northwest Family program previously. Initiated the project with North Clackamas Watershed Council when they came and talked to us in 2021. So this goes way back, but super happy to still be here on the project. And I am joined by Karen. Will introduce yourself, and then the other members of the leadership team.
Great. Karen Chapman, excited to be here. It's the first time you guys have seen me on this project. I'm involved in a lot of other things, but for this project, I am the project manager, so ODOT holds a contract with Consol, and I have the full design team. Some of the design in phase one, those team members are now under the Consol, they're now subconsultants to me. And so I report to Jonathan and Gabriel and me and Shelley and everybody, but all of the design
We feel
efforts.
for you. We feel.
I love this job.
I'll pass it over to Shelley.
Hi, I'm Shelley Romero. I'm the Area Manager Central for ODOT Region 1, Project Delivery, and I get the most interesting projects we've ever met, this one being one of them. So I'm happy to be working on this project within the city of Milwaukie.
And you guys know me, I'm Amy Van Riesen with the North Clackamas Watershed Council. I'm the Watershed Restoration Manager, and I function as the council's project manager on the design team.
You know me as well. I'm Neil Schulman. I'm on the project leadership team.
Joseph Brilliam, I'm the lead for the city on the leadership team as well. And I want to give a shout out to Jonathan Horowitz, who's with ODOT, who's and Mandy Bird,
Yeah, and Mandy Bird are awesome.
and Jen, and Peter, and Adam. The list goes on. Yeah, quite a few, quite a few stuff.
Okay, so here is our agenda today. The purpose of the meeting, we wanted to respond to your letter. Now, we can't cover everything, literally each one of these topics, we could spend an hour more. And we don't have that time, we only have an hour to cover it all. So we wanted to just provide this presentation, a higher level overview, and if you have more specific questions, we do plan to follow up with a written response and provide more detail with that. So today we'll talk through the project overview and then get into, I know there's been a lot of technical questions, so get into the weeds a little bit, probably hopefully not too deep, but provide you with some engineering slides and show you what's going on with the shared use path design and also where we're at with evaluating the sewer line there, and then look ahead to next steps and ongoing. Okay, so first up on project overview, we'll talk about the critical partnership that's needed to deliver this project, project goal, the construction, the design and construction elements to achieve the goal, and the project timeline, the funding outlook, where we stand now, to Robert, your question, and then the collaborative team structure that we have going on. So here are the four entities. I know you're very familiar with these four. This composes our leadership team. Without any one of these entities, we would not be where we are today. So we have the Oregon Department of Transportation. No one else can actually hold a contract to construct a state highway bridge other than ODOT. So ODOT's involvement has been absolutely essential, dating back to Tova Peltz back in 2021, and just, yeah, it's been a great partnership. And then we have, ODOT owns the State Highway Bridge, and then we have the City of Milwaukie, primary footprint owner, owning most of the project footprint. And obviously this project, the outcomes of this project, the benefits of this project are going to be realized by the residents of Milwaukie and the surrounding community. So I knew it without the City of Milwaukie, that's for sure. Then we have these NGOs, right? So we have the local community presence here with the North Clackamas Watershed Council, who just brings so much capacity with community engagement and Neil's just done a great job of securing that initial seed funding and really demonstrating those that community support. And we'll have a funding slide that really shows that here in a bit. But combined with American Rivers, who brings dam removal experience and experience managing large-scale restoration, as well as leveraging funding dollars that are not traditional to ODOT or city in the restoration realm, and bringing that project management expertise has been really key. So I should give you a minute to just read this, because it is quite a sentence. But this project goal is meant to encompass the overall vision for the project, and the interesting thing about it is it doesn't just say reestablish fish passage. It doesn't just say transportation. It says all the things. And this really reflects the vision of the 4 entities and aligns that under one project goal, desired outcomes, and also reflects community input and desired outcomes of what we've been hearing from the community stakeholders as well. So we take the project goal, we break it down into smaller objectives, and then that is then broken down into, okay, how do we achieve those objectives? And so that's where we have our design, which leads to our construction elements. And overall, again, that vision is increasing species and community resiliency, overall system resiliency. So project objectives, primary, we have that $50 million from NOAA. That's really for dam removal, restoration, fish passage. And so that's a real primary driver of the funds we have right now. But everything is equally important. It's one project. So modernizing the 99 East Bridge, we can't remove the dam without doing that. Restoring reconnecting downtown to the waterfront, we understand that is a priority for the city council. It also restores, a migration corridor for wildlife, that urban watershed, and then connecting that to the waterfront. And then we have the 14-acre habitat restoration and restoring that impoundment. And what you see bolded here are the things that are really aligned the closest with the city goals and priorities. So, restoring that habitat means we are also removing a lot of contaminated sediment, which is a human health hazard, becomes airborne when the water goes down during the summer months. And it's a real concern. It also, when we remove that contaminated sediment, we increase floodway capacity, and so it attenuates floodwater to lower Kellogg Creek and coming off the lower Willamette River. So there's some benefits there. That's one of the mitigation strategies in the city's natural hazard mitigation plan. And then you see shared use path shows up over in community enhancement features too. So reconnects those 3 parts and creates benefits for the community. Restoring green space and then access to green space. So it takes that sort of dead impoundment right now that's not really usable and then makes it a usable area right in the middle of downtown. So we cover the primary construction elements. The project timeline, where we are right now is final design phase. So we're working through, we just finished our 30% design acceptance package this past summer. And then we'll be moving forward to our 60% design milestone in the late spring. And this is all boots on the ground, all hands on deck. We are motoring forward because we need to spend this NOAA funding by December 2027. And we really want to get the project to a shovel-ready status. So, we can't control everything, right? And like you said, there's been some wrenches thrown in since January of this year. So what we can control is we have this funding and we can get the most value with that money and complete final design and get everything as planned and as far along as possible, that even if we are not able to secure all of the construction funds, we'll be able to pick it up and save a lot of money when the project can be constructed. If we don't get all the funding, we're still motoring towards that goal. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So project funding, this slide really shows, it's a real snapshot of just how invested the community has been in the project with those, those dollars in phase 1. And also North Clackamas Watershed Council held, the contract that sponsored that work in phase 1, the feasibility work. Basically, the American Rivers and the North Clackamas Watershed Council can hold contracts to do work that's not building public works infrastructure or replacing the state highway bridge. So if it involved restoration or stuff like that, we've held contracts for the project. And Milwaukie. Other things about this. So thank you. In your letter, you clarified how the city's funding that was provided, the $1 million, is from the URA funds and how that could be spent. We understand that can't be spent on sewer relocation or in the upper impoundment, but needs to be spent on the lower portion of the project. And that, we didn't have that information, so that was really, really helpful to hear. That $1 million is so important because it really demonstrates the city commitment to the project to other partners and other funders. And it's really helps leverage additional funding. So it's helped leverage the Metro funds. And then collectively, the Metro funds and the city funds really are useful for leveraging those federal dollars because they're non-federal. So very, very important, you know, for this, $1 million is not nothing, right? But for this project, it may seem like a little drop in the bucket because of the price tag, but it is so critical coming from the city to have that funding. The Metro funds here, so we have $10 million from them, as you know. Those funds super important and need to be spent before 2031. That's the other thing driving the project. Okay, quickly, and then I'll stop talking about it.
Oh, can I go back? Sorry.
Yeah.
I do have a question. So the, on the funding. So the OWEB Environmental Restoration Fund, I've heard some talk about, potential, I mean, I see that most of that is federal, but that's the one piece of state. I've heard some talk about potential state funding through Monsanto settlement dollars. Is that?
That
or-
is, yeah, it's the Oregon, yes.
And is that really, that's kind of, what's a reasonable expectation in terms of that?
I think our project is ready to go and aligns closely with what we've heard. They're developing that criteria now, and so we're just tracking it and seeing how they're developing that program and then trying to align, you know, with that. It's not fully developed and there hasn't been any release of, you know, notification or soliciting.
Do you know what their timeline is to do that?
They want to get funds out.
Well, there's three, they've divided the legislative act, divided the fund into three tranches. One is, has to be implemented by New Year's, goes to tribes, and that is basically out the door. Then there are two other funds, both of which in the high level language developed by the legislature and the settlement could very well be written for this project. What has not been determined is how much of the fund they are going to try and get out the door quickly and versus sustain the fund and run and sustain the corpus of the fund and give out money in smaller batches and keep it going for longer. I'm tracking that process pretty closely. There's another meeting later this week. But it is supposedly they are moving toward an application at the end of 2026.
And I'm glad you brought us back, Lisa, because there were a couple of things I did want to cover about this. So these two, the federal highway, I don't know why I'm it's not working.
Yeah, it doesn't work on the screen. So.
Okay, so the federal highway, the two big pots there were frozen this year, but we've heard from our congressional offices that they should be coming online again in a couple months. So that's good news. We will evaluate those and see what the changes are and what's happening with that. That being said, you know, it's a big hit if those aren't there for the project, right? The viability of going to construction on time, you know, looks pretty thin. We are working with other partners though to explore other non-traditional sources. So we've had there's just in the nation, there's a big shift of where funding's going and how it's flowing. And so we're trying to look at that and see what other opportunities there are. I think really outside the box. We're not giving up. Okay, quickly, project team structure. We cover the leadership team members. And we meet monthly. We discuss, you know, we're administering the project, so we're discussing project management, contracting, engagement. We're hitting everything that is needed to make the project happen. And we make decisions, you know, by consensus and talk through things. And that being said, we're also constrained by the organizations we work for. We have to often come up with, okay, we think collectively this is the best plan, this is the only feasible route for this reason. And we use, data to come to the conclusions, and then we have to bring it back to city council, we have to bring it back to ODOT's upper management, and bring it back to the ultimate, decision makers, so. This is a lot, collaborative project team, there are a lot of work these on this project. And we sort of corralled into committees or sub-teams, if you will. So like Karen is the lead, the project manager for Contour, and then they have nine consulting firms working under them, right? So we have a huge consulting team working on this project. And then we have the technical team here. So that is composed of subject matter experts and disciplinary leads from the leadership team entities. So dating back to 2023, that was Tessie Prentice representing on that for the city, and then it went to Andy Bird. And then this summer, when we hit our first big design milestone, and Emma walked into that meeting, and so did Peter, it became very clear we really needed city engineering staff and public works staff involved. We wanted involvement earlier, but we were really have been told about city capacity limitations and resource limitations, and so we were trying to work with what we have, but Peter and Adam and Jen and Mandy being there since this summer has been invaluable, because that gives us the direction and the input needed from the city, because we really can't advance design of the elements we're about to talk through without their direct involvement. Couple other notable things, we have design milestones, so 30% design, 60% design, it's all iteratively designed. At those review milestones, we have kind of those extended subject matter experts from leadership team entities that review that package, provide input, and then that goes into the next iteration of the design. We also have a communications team that's led by ODOT that meets monthly, but it really has a lot of the same layers on from all of the leadership team entities. So kind of vertically and across, we're really integrated, and there are members of the leadership team on each of these teams. Some of us get to sit in on the phone meeting or facilitate them. Yeah, we just really like each other. Okay.
Thank goodness we like each other.
Yeah, we do actually like each other, and they really like the other.
Yeah, genuinely.
Okay, so that.
And take a walk down the Syracuse path.
Yeah, we can skip that. Okay, so I get to stop talking and pass it over to Karen to talk us through some technical things.
Great, thanks, April. We'll go down into the weeds a little bit. I'm going to try not to go down into the weeds too far, because I'm an engineer. Keep going. But I recognize that the shared use path especially is a very important aspect of this project. It has some challenges, but I think it's important to share with you what we've done, and then through a relocation is sort of something that's happening. We'll share those. So. Okay, I'm going to start out with value engineering. So why are we talking value engineering? Well, value engineering ends up being an important part of the overall shared use path concepts. Very large projects, when you use federal dollars, they require a value engineering study. And value engineering isn't it's to look for best value. Its purpose is to bring in subject matter experts and really people who can look at a project just differently. So it was led by an external third-party consultant with some Kellogg team members that weren't involved in developing the alternatives. So it really was meant to be a fresh look. But day one, the first 2 hours was April, myself, Jonathan, and others defining for this team the project objectives and the purpose and need. So they are not trying to cost cut. They are not trying to change what you're trying to achieve. What they're doing is giving a fresh look at what you're trying to do to try to identify risks that we might not see and come up with maybe some more creative solutions. So this became important because they came up with a couple of alternatives on the shared use path. So this slide shows you 3 different options that we looked at. There's the baseline option. I think we've been looking at this all along. It connects Milwaukie Bay Park to Dogwood Park and Main Street. It goes underneath the Washington Street Bridge. It goes underneath the new OR 99 bridge. And it gives you, I think, what you were looking for, the ability for residents to go walk along this beautifully restored creek that you're going to have. The value engineering team found the challenge that there's going to be flooding, and I'll get into a little bit more detail, but this path is going to be flooded, and not just like a few days a year for a little bit. It's something I think the city needs to consider. So the value engineering team said, okay, well, how do we still connect parks and how do we still get people where they want to be? So how do we meet this objective? And they came up with what they called Value Engineering Alternative 8 in the study. The full study was shared with the city staff, and they were allowed to provide some comments on that. The Value Engineering Study 8 said, hey, let's not send the path underneath the Washington Street Bridge, which really is the low point that's causing some flooding, and put a tunnel under 99. So raise it up and put it in a tunnel. And then come up in between, come up to Washington Street between the two bridges. But the problem is that it's the ADA accessibility, the ADA design cannot be met coming up between the two bridges, and a tunnel is very confining and concerning. So we'll go into a little bit more detail there. And then they also looked at another alternative that said, okay, let's look at a tunnel all the way south. That ultimately doesn't really meet the goal either, because it doesn't connect the parks. But that gives you a little bit of a sense of what the VE team was looking at. So let's go back to the baseline concept that we've all been talking about. This is kind of the plan view alignment. It starts with where the marked crossing is at Milwaukie Bay Park. It drops down underneath the Washington Street Bridge, and then we'll go underneath the new OR 99 bridge, kind of meanders along. I have the Coho Point Developers preliminary wall in there because that was influencing what we were doing. Coho Point timing is a little bit up in the air, so it probably will be a little bit of less of a constraint. But at the end of the day, it comes up to Main Street. It's a 14-foot wide path. We're following ODOT's ADA design standards for width, for maximum grade. So this would provide two-way bicycle and pedestrian traffic. Like I said, passes under both bridges, but there are major operational and maintenance considerations that you're going to see here shortly. And here it is. This is the profile view of the path. This is a really engineering line, so bear with me. Some key things that this shows. There are two blue boxes up on top. The skinny one on the left is the Washington Street Bridge. One of the design
Is
criteria.
that the bridge, that's what you're calling the bridge in the park? We don't,
Yes,
we've never
I'm
called
sorry.
it that. We've never called it that, so that's a new name to us. Okay.
It has several different names, so I apologize. I will have to.
I think on Google Maps, it is called Washington Street, and Tessie actually once asked me, can we change that? That makes no
It
sense.
makes no sense, yeah.
What do we call it? The Milwaukie
bridge
Park
in the
Bridge?
Well, to get under the bridge in the park, to get under any bridge, you need to
Whoever
provide.
involved this, we're gonna name the bridge after.
One of the design criteria for paths, not just ADA, but for paths is 10 feet of vertical clearance. And that's because people ride bikes, people ride unicycles, and people do things, but 10 feet is the clearance. So you can see the very west edge of the bridge in the park. Is the
You
low
can call it
point.
Washington Street, now that you've clarified, that's what it is.
So we go down 10 feet, and you can see that's the low point. Now, we have to stay low because we also need to get underneath the new OR 99 bridge, which is a lot thicker because it's a longer bridge and it supports, those are the girders, that's the depth of that, what we would call the structural depth of that bridge. But we need 10 feet there too. So you can see the path, and then you see this dashed blue line and OHW. That stands for ordinary high water. Ordinary high water elevation is 23.7. And what that represents is on a typical year, the flooding level. That's typically what you're going to see. It's an important elevation for permitting because it defines in water work and out of water work. But the 23.7, so I drew that 23.7 foot elevation line, and you can see that path, that segment of that path, 400 feet, is going to be underwater every single year for a lot of days. And I'll show you a little bit more of that. But it's 4 months a year. Oh, I didn't show March, April, May, and June. And it's a little counterintuitive, like why May and June? You would think that, rain's in the
Rose
winter, so
Festival.
what's going on? There you go, that's it, blame it on that. No, the deal is that as the snow melts, the Columbia comes up, it backs into the Willamette. What's causing the flooding is not the water coming down Kellogg Creek. It's the Willamette rising and backing up. So I'll show you some more.
Well, they do artificially raise the river for Rose Festival as well, to get those big ships in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, as somebody who lives near Elk Rock Island, we know during Rose Festival, we can't get to Elk Rock.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I'll show you a chart that we included in our hydraulics report that shows you in a little bit more detail how many days per month that we would expect flooding, but generally between March and June, 400 feet of that. So from our design perspective, that's not insignificant. Here, I was just trying to show you from a plan view where the inundation limits, the flooding limits are. So you can see you're dropping off in Milwaukie Bay Park, and we're coming down fast because we have to get underneath the Washington Street Bridge. And then just when you get on the other side of 99, then we start really climbing fast to meet up with Main Street. But those are the limits of the flooding. So as we developed that, and April mentioned there are ongoing meetings with city staff, which we really appreciate, the design team has been saying, we think this is a potential issue for you. What do you plan to do about that? So we talked about, there's going to be significant maintenance involved with this because you've got water coming up and down. In fact, we're working with the ODOT pavement expert to try to figure out, do you use concrete pavement? Because it can handle the inundation. But when concrete, if you get water kind of carving out the soils underneath, it can fall in, and then you all of a sudden don't meet ADA. I mean, ADA is a 1/4 inch on a sidewalk. Or do you use asphalt, which can be a lot more forgiving, but you end up with undulations. But at the end of the day, you're going to have cycles of water up and down, and you're going to have to accept some maintenance. So we wanted to make sure that that your staff are thinking about that. And then just operationally, how is this path going to function? And Peter suggested warning signs like watch for flooding, makes really good sense. But I and our team are continuing to just nudge a little bit, like what else do you need? We want to make sure that the response plan and the maintenance plan are well thought out so that if there are design aspects that we need to include in the project, that we're accounting for those. So we just want everything to be well thought out.
Well thought out and to minimize the city, liability. Avoid redesign as well.
And here's another view of this. This shows, and this is looking downstream from above the new 99 bridge. You can see the cross hatching is where the dam is, where the water passes today. I highlighted the shared use path, again, that 10-foot vertical clearance issue. So on the far sort of eastern side of the inundation, it's going to still be a couple of feet. So this is what this is going to look like. The line along the bottom where it says finished grade, that's the bottom of the channel. I just want to point out to you that there's a main channel, that's kind of the big flat line on the bottom, and it kind of comes up on the left-hand side and then it flattens out. That's the wildlife access that everyone wanted to be in the project, and then the slopes come up. So, again, just wanted to give you different views.
So I'm trying to understand what we're looking at. This
Yes.
is, you're saying looking toward the Willamette
Yes.
from But this is the bridge, the new future bridge
Yeah.
at
Yes,
the top? Okay.
That
Yeah.
hatches what it currently would be. Yeah.
The existing culverts, yeah.
yeah. Sorry, and people who are watching online aren't going to see this, but this is the existing structure.
Okay.
This is the new 99 bridge and bridge rail. It's much longer. It's much longer. This is the primary channel. And then it slopes up to the shared use path. This is the railing, it's like safety railing for pedestrians on the shared use path. And then on this side, it comes up, and this is a wildlife bench. So that when the water, is normally flowing down here, you can have access for, all the different wildlife. I'm not sure I can name them, and then back up here. So what I'm trying to show you here is, here's this ordinary high water elevation. This is that sort of typical flooding on an annual basis. And as you're looking underneath the new bridge, this is how much water is going to be there.
Do you have a slide, or is the next slide the Washington Street Bridge, which would be
I
even
don't.
higher?
I don't have, yes.
But the flooding on that one would be even higher than this bridge, because the Washington Street is
well,
lower.
The Washington Street Bridge is just lower.
Yeah.
But this channel is essentially going to be the same channel that we carve out underneath the Washington Street Bridge as well.
But yes, the trail will have more inundation.
Yes,
It'll be deeper.
it's lower. Yeah, in fact, let me go back. Because here's the Washington Street Bridge, so you've got that much flooding.
If
And
that's
then here's
10
the
feet,
99.
it looks like it's over 5.
Yes.
Okay.
6.5, about 6.5 feet of flooding,
Okay.
almost 7 feet of flooding. Yeah. And so this was just to make sure that we're clear that we really looked at data for this. And this chart, it shows the water surface elevation on the left, that's what WIC is. That's the water surface elevation that is going to result from backups of the Willamette River. The shared use path low point underneath the Washington Street Bridge is 16.7. So as you can look at how deep the water is going to be, how many days per year. So my example, in May, the path low point underneath the Washington Street Bridge will be under 3 feet of water about 4 days during that month at the path low point. And it's not 4 consecutive days. It's going to be a day here and a day there, and then next week some, because the Willamette kind of comes up and scale. So from, again, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but from a maintenance and operations standpoint, these are important things, I think, for the city to think about, to make sure that you're getting the value of everything that you're realizing everything that you want to realize with this project.
It's going to take resources to manage, and we understand.
Yes,
your-
that's a good range.
I don't think we have to solve that tonight, but it's just you have to realize that there's a couple ways to skin this issue, and that is, if you want to be super responsive, then you're checking the weather all the time, you're checking the water level, you open it and close it. That's quite frankly manpower intensive and quite frankly risky. And, the other more, safe path is that you would close it for a 4-month period. And I mean, close it where people can't get in it. But at the same time, you kind of have to have it flexible because you may have these things outside of that 4-month. Yeah.
And that's closing is the design consideration. So what does that closing look like? Is it bollards? Is it a gate? And that's where it comes into the design consideration.
You can crawl over a bollard.
You can't, and so if the city really wants to close it, that's, I think, is the thing, maybe, what does that look like? So that we make sure we consider all of those things in our design. So I just wanted to show you again, just like a little bit of a close-up of these value engineering alternatives. So all that data, that's what the value engineering team saw, and they went, oh, holy cow. Can we come up with a better way to do this and still meet the project objectives? And at the end of the day, they had an idea for a tunnel under 99, but the connection grade that you can see between the two bridges doesn't meet 88. So it's infeasible. And the tunnel that's 10 feet tall and 16 feet wide and 115 feet long would be incredibly confining and probably a safety concern for the city as well.
So if it doesn't meet with that curve, it doesn't meet the 10% grade. So I was thinking, could it go across the actual existing bridge somehow? But it wouldn't, that wouldn't be.
The grade we're looking for is 4.5%. So this is more than double, twice as steep.
Yeah.
The other issue that one of my funny engineers said, if you did this, you get a kid on a skateboard, coming around that corner and then whammo right into the tunnel. That's probably not a good thing. So at the end of the day, not recommended, and I think city staff supported that as we talked through it. And then again, just another close-up of the other value engineering alternative. And this one just does not meet, again, it's another tunnel, but it doesn't achieve what you're looking for, which is an open path to enjoy the restoration. So we just went, okay, thanks, but no thanks. So not recommended. Okay.
If the tunnel is up, and it's above that floodplain level, so it could conceivably be open, like at 4 feet or something, and have an open view? Or no?
No.
It would have to be fully enclosed.
It would have to be fully enclosed, yeah. One of the things that happens, and we talked a little bit about like some solid rail, like why can't you use some solid rail to, almost like you go to an aquarium, like that's really cool, you see the water on the other side and you're walking over here, but as the water comes up, you end up trapping fish. So it helps for certain things, but it doesn't help for others, so ultimately that doesn't.
Yeah, I think the debris,
Yes, debris,
like,
maybe.
to get your permits, the regulatory agencies are really, want to see that debris can pass through there and everything.
So where we are, to kind of summarize with what we're doing with the shared use path, we're continuing to advance this baseline design concepts. I think it's the closest to achieving the goals of the project. But it's going to need some active management and some city resources during, when it's actually in use. And we need to understand the design team needs to understand what that looks like, so we can look those things in. And then I wanted you to recognize that, it's about a $100 million project. It's a $15 million path. This is 15% of the project. That's a lot. That's a lot. So we want to make sure it gets done right. If that amount of money is going to be spent, let's make sure we do it right. And we just want to make sure we're not, picking up a design and putting it back down or making a change because another decision was made. So as we're involved with meetings with city staff, we're just asking for a little bit more input on the maintenance and operations. Okay. Is it okay moving on to the sewer line? Not nearly as exciting. I'm sure this path is way more exciting.
We love wastewater here.
Can I clarify, I guess, some things with the shared use path? You're saying a retaining wall or something to make it so it floods for fewer days per year isn't possible because debris would be caught or fish would get caught into it.
Correct.
So there's really no way we can design around this. The path will have to flood for about a month every year. In total,
More than more months.
a month in total days is what.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, across the 4-month period.
And it might be worth, I know Shelley has, being in the transportation realm of other bridges that have trails under them and some issues they've experienced. So there's references here.
Yeah, there's just all kinds of there are tunnels over in Portland, there's been homeless camping, there's been people who have experienced assaults or crimes. And so it becomes really challenging from a maintenance and a public safety perspective. So that's something that you may want to consider here, when you're talking about the tunnel. You can put flood warning signs, but 3-4 feet of water, that's pretty significant if it floods to that level. So, you want to fence it off and have it, deem it unusable for certain times, and how maintenance intensive is that?
is it, and I guess, are there other paths that flood to this degree? Do you not have massive amounts of silt buildup or think about biking on a path that floods? And that algae is going to be slippery for more than that 4-month period.
Silt buildup, yeah, and, but you can design a bit on the slippery end to.
Yeah, we can talk about
Yeah.
what the surfacing type is, but that just, it sort of piles on to it's gonna take some resources to reopen the path. Following these events.
Did you look at a tunnel that extends under the Washington Street Bridge as well, or that would just be too
You
expensive?
can't because that 10 feet, you still have to have the 10 feet of vertical clearance. So we're showing it as open in the baseline,
Yeah.
but when you end up with a tunnel there, the whole idea of the tunnel under 99 is you have the OR 99 bridge will sit higher,
Yeah,
so the tunnel can come up. And that was what was driving the just tunnel underneath 99 and then come up in between and not go underneath the Washington Street Bridge at all, just because it's so low.
Yeah.
That's really the problem, is Washington Street Bridge.
with $15 million, is that in range for like over the highway passing, or would that be far out exceed $15 million?
We
Could
don't
I-
consider that over the highway.
I think it would far exceed that, and one of the reasons is you have to, in meeting ADA grades, you've got the bridge that's over what you're trying to cross, over 99, but then you have to, ramp down, and sometimes
Sure.
that takes
Footprint is
distance
very
to do
big.
that,
Yeah,
or that takes a lot of, so I think that would be very challenging considering the built environment that's there, and then some of the things that you also want.
And it'd have to be constructed pretty high so that you had vertical clearance for freight to
Yeah.
move through.
Which is 17 feet, at least 17 feet, 18 and a half feet.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
do staff feel comfortable being able to, I've never heard of a path that floods for 4 months out of the year. I don't know as many multi-use paths. It seems like a big lift to clear and clean and operate. Are we able to do that, or do people feel comfortable?
I think actively managing that thing will be a challenge, right? People tracking, I don't have somebody.
It will be a challenge.
I would suggest we not go too far down this rabbit hole,
Yeah.
because I understand your concerns, but I mean, that's why we have these smart people trying to evaluate all possible solutions here. If you thought this one was difficult, let's get to the sewer.
And I'm gonna start right off the bat and say, for the sake of time, we could talk about the sewer line for hours and hours. It is incredibly complicated. And so my intent is to share with you what we know, what we have found out, but there's still a lot more coordination to do between ODOT, the city, and the design team to, advance this. So. Okay, so it all starts out with trying to make sure that we're achieving the restoration outcome that everybody wants. And the creek restoration is really split up into 3 different reaches, which I'll show. But here's a nice glory picture of, here's the impoundment, and then Interfluve did this fantastic graphic that really shows what you're trying to achieve. So it's kind of warms the heart, like, no, this is why we're all here. So that's what we're trying to get to. So as I mentioned, the restoration design really considers 3 reaches in the engineering terminology. There's an upper, middle, and a lower. The upper is really connecting the existing creek at Oakfield Road down to the sewer line crossing. That's a point where the dynamics of the creek change. And so you can see it's kind of just a creek in the upper reach. It's primary, secondary, tertiary channels, lots going on in the middle reach. And then the lower reach is just connecting into the Willamette River. But because of that change from the upper to the middle to try to really achieve what we're all trying to do, the sewer line is just at the wrong elevation. And here's a profile of that. the dash line at the top, another engineering drawing, but the dash line at the top is the mud line, if you will. That's where the soils are today. And the lower solid line is the creek channel. You see some little kind of dips downs, those are pools and baffles and all kinds of restoration stuff. But I'm pointing to where the sewer line sits today, its elevation. And it sits squarely above where we want the creek profile to be. If we, I think one of the questions that the council asked was, have you looked at adjusting the creek profile so that we don't have to do anything with the sewer line? And the answer is yes. And from an engineering perspective, if you try to raise the creek channel that you designed, if you try to raise it up, you're not going to achieve as much in the middle zone, which has all the different, that's where the money is in this. And then the upper reach, you end up having to chase up Oakfield Road further. So you extend the project way up Oakfield Road, and so it just becomes more complicated. So that Oakfield Road location is a very convenient connection point. And then if we dropped it down to where there was enough clearance and leave the sewer line in place, at the end, westerly end of the middle reach is the Union Pacific Railroad Bridge. And so you end up adding a risk of that because you're excavating more at that location, which is going to be a concern. So all that to say, we think we're in a sweet spot here with the restoration design. It's been scientifically designed from a maintenance perspective and a natural adaptability standpoint. We're trying to achieve a design that you can put in place, it's not gonna be maintenance free, but it supports itself. It has the right grades, it's natural, and it becomes its thing. So what we concluded is the existing sewer line, something has to happen with that sewer line. So here we are. This shows where the sewer line is. It takes sewage from an apartment complex underneath Kellogg Creek into a county west system out to the water treatment plant. That's what this is trying to.
Is it taking just from a apartment complex, or is it taking from that whole area in the yellow dots?
It's doesn't take from all the area in the yellow dots. Peter might be able to.
I mean, it's not the full area, but you can see.
I think
It's pretty extensive though, and maybe not all of within that sewer shop, but primarily.
It's not a single facility.
Yeah, we've got several lines that all converge.
And it's an 8-inch line, so it's not tremendously large. I'm sure you have larger facilities than
Right, yeah.
8-inch sewer line. Okay, so when we started analyzing, and we have subject matter experts in Consor who I think have worked for the city and worked for a lot of cities and a lot of public agencies in the area with sewer systems. It's a gravity flow system that connects into the West Pipeline, as I said. The city shared with us when we came on board some inspection data, and I think somebody tried to run a camera through that line, but they hit a spot where the camera couldn't go any further. And that typically is due to either a blockage or there's some sort of sag or kink, if you will, in the pipe. Neither of those is. So we've been talking with city staff about, when would that pipe naturally need to be replaced? I think we have maybe a little bit of differing opinion. We think it's closer to 10 years. I think city staff think it's closer to 20 years. But at the end of the day, you're still within your planning horizon. So we're not prematurely, if this pipe was to be replaced, it's not being replaced prematurely. So we looked at adjusting the creek profile, so there was no relocation. I talked about that really wasn't feasible. We looked at alternatives to take the pipe on its current alignment, but just go underneath the creeks, like way down underneath the creek, and then over the creek, And then out of the creek, that's the relocate the sewer line. It's like just move it out of the creek. So as we looked at those alternatives, we worked with city staff to not just what the current sewer flow rates are, but what's planned in the future. So we make sure that we're thinking about the size appropriately, making sure we're meeting the project objectives, minimizing city long-term costs and liability. That's always a consideration. Construction cost and timing. And then again, there's costs that are coming your way at some point. And so the costs we're looking at are really within the horizon. And one of the key study findings is that no matter what we do, we can't maintain a gravity flow, which is the simplest, that's the most cost-effective system, if you will. You're going to have a pump station under any circumstance. So the major options, kind of talking through lowering, again, can't do a gravity system. We need to have a pump station. We looked at a pressure system, and okay, I will say I am not a sewer line designer, so I don't know what all these mean. Jen and Peter probably know a whole lot more to answer those questions. But a pressure system also isn't feasible because the flows are too low. So you need a new pump station and you need a new force main. So we do have a feasible option that goes way down underneath the creek.
And I think actually the pressure system should be siphoned.
Oh. Thank you. Yes. So I want to acknowledge that there is an option that goes way down underneath the creek, but it's a similar cost to what we're suggesting as a recommended alternative. And doing that way down underneath the creek has several constructability challenges that we would have to face. So raising up and over, this is what a utility bridge looks like. It's very costly, it's feasible, but it's costly. And you end up with this kind of eyesore, and as the creek comes up, you're gonna always worry about debris and kind of attractive nuisance. So when we looked at realignment, we think that that's really the best option. Get the creek out of the channel, tie into the existing system, add a new pump station with a force main, and we can work with city staff to figure out where's the best place to put the pump station. But I think this really provides the lowest risk overall, has the best value, and it provides the best long-term maintenance and operations because it's out of the floodplain. We can set it up to where it's accessible by maintenance staff, and if there was a problem, you're not having to go to Pleasant Street. So this is the alternative that we're recommending to staff, and I cannot really reiterate enough that we are still working through all of this. There's no decisions. We're not looking for an immediate decision. There's still a lot to talk through, but this is what we're suggesting. Here's the solution. Pump station at the end of 28th, and then it connects into the existing system, replace some sewer lines, and then it sends the flow up to an existing system on Lake Road. So kind of going back over some of the questions you have all the options been explored to avoid relocation at a pump station? Yes. We investigated a total of 9 options, including a channel design adjustment. A pump station is needed regardless. So a pump station just is not going to be avoidable in any circumstance. And we believe the best option is to move the sewer line and put the pump station up on 28, and that's what we were showing. I think one of the other questions, and this one we're not able to answer, but I'll give you a little bit more information, just things we're thinking about. Can the sewer line be included in the main project, the main construction project? The answer is yes, but there's a big but there. There's 2 different characters of work going on. Water demarcation of elevation 23.7 is very important from a permitting standpoint. If you're working below that, you have to get in-water work permits. Above that is upland. We call that upland. So
and permitting for, sorry to interrupt, but the permitting for in-water work is extensive. I mean, It takes a lot of specialized expertise. We had all the permits you would need from local, state, federal agencies to just do the sediment sampling, like 13 permits. And I mean, it is a lot. It costs a lot of money. We had, specialized amphibious equipment. So depending on what alternative is chosen and how things shake up, I mean, it is a big lift. That effort alone was, close to $3 million alone, so.
And when you think about replacing the sewer system, the existing system has to remain in place and operational the entire time you're building a new one. So you build a new one, and so that's that's all the pipe work and everything. Then there's lots of testing, and then there's connecting it, and then there's removing. In order for our main construction contractor to really start their work, they're gonna start at the upper end. And if you think about like lowering the lake, they're gonna work from the top down. That's what makes sense. So the sewer line getting out of the way is a very early critical item. So there's a scheduling risk with when that happens, when that's able to be removed. Removing the pipe would be in-water work, and the restoration is all in-water work. So we're working through the permitting for that. So it's sort of a, no-brainer to include removal of the existing sewer line when it's ready to be removed, included in the major project, because we're already accounting for that permitting, as April just said, numbers of permits and cost. But if you can, the rest of the work is upland work. So it doesn't have the same, it's not permit free, but it doesn't have the same in-water permits. Okay, so I think what I want to leave you with is we think there's a lot of long-term maintenance and operation cost advantages to getting the pump station and the new infrastructure up out of the creek. It will help long-term, but it also helps with the work that needs to be done in the creek. There's still, I think, a lot of discussion with city staff, with ODOT staff. It's just, I will leave it at that, because then we can continue to. We can't solve everything. There's not a lot of time out in the field today talking about it, and it's going to end up being probably a risk-based solution, risk assessment.
We're looking at it from all the angles.
Yeah, it was incredibly helpful, and I super appreciate how you distilled the complexity into something we can address. And I know you said, Karen, it's not like we're not answering it tonight. We've got a lot of work still to do, but I'm sure you've heard from my staff, we have a capital improvement budgeting process. So is there any sense you guys could give us on milestones or deadlines for sort of when you need to know various things? Because that, I tell my staff they can't make commitments to you unless we get direction from council. And I think any clarity you could provide us on sort of when those decision points need to happen are really helpful, so we can engage most effectively at the staff-to-staff table.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, that's a great transition into the next slide.
Great.
I'd say right now, the work that Peter and his folks are planning to do to evaluate capacity, the downstream siphon, and some of the input they're going to be providing is what's really needed right now.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
While that's happening, we're going to be working on this delivery pathway angle, because we're just looking at major risk to both projects, right? And needing the sewer line to be online before the restoration work can even start. And then try to convey that to funders. They're just like, do we want to fund this? So, there's a lot to be done. But stepping ahead to next steps, kind of down there at the bottom, one of the biggest things that Peter took back to his team was looking at the clean water revolving loan and saying, hey, what benefits could we get from pursuing this? And then I would be working with Peter to how can we leverage existing funding that we have and things like that. And then at that point, if it's beneficial, adding the sewer relocation to the CIP before the April deadline, because we have to submit that application in April, would be the timeline we're looking at for the next step.
The Clean Water Revolving Fund.
I think in order to achieve, I think there's different dates that it can be submitted, but that one kind of
That's our
keeps everything,
I worked
keeps
backwards.
everything on track.
Yeah, I took their timeline and I worked all the way back. We would have to have the application in by the deadline.
You know, I really appreciate, all that has been done, and I think all these recommendations are good. I think that one of the sort of, we both approach this, that this is such a valuable project that we all want to do. But I would say that probably there's a different approach, at least one aspect, in that you're trying to deliver this project, we're on board. We have some other issues that we got a city to run. And so when you say that, well, you're gonna have to replace this pipe anyway, and for those 10 years, 20 years, I'm not sure that, from our perspective, that's a big difference. Quite frankly, it doesn't need to be replaced right now. And so, Peter's got a lot of priorities that would be ahead of a 10-year project, that we have to get done. And, if we're being asked to front some money, there's a couple of issues. One, there's this big question mark about these federal funds. My nightmare scenario is the city is asked to, spend $5 million on this. And say something $5 million. And then those federal funds never appeared.
Yeah, we're not asking, the sewer line project would not go forward without knowing that the.
Yeah. That's just my nightmare scenario, and so when I get back to we have a city run, it's like we have these other, upgrades that are, near, we gotta meet all these PFAS, forever chemical treatment requirements, that's a regulatory requirement. That's a big CIP project as well. And there's just other, pumps and pipes project that, are closer on the replacement horizon than this sewer pipe would have been. And so, we have to think about all of those things, and eventually, even if, Daddy Warbucks comes along and gives us a lot of money, we're still gonna have some operating costs and that kind of thing, which we understand, we're willing to, do that, but we always have these things in our mind about the impact on rates to our ratepayers. And we have this goal that I mentioned earlier about delivering Kellogg and Milwaukie Bay Park in like several years, their term. We also have these goals about affordability. And a lot of our residents, quite frankly, struggle with affordability, and we're trying to keep their utility rates down. And so those are all the things that come on that maybe you don't see on a day-to-day basis because you got this project, but those are the things that we have on our mind as well that give us pause, okay? And I do that to just sort of highlight, maybe a different perspective, at least in some parts of the project about priorities and that kind of thing.
If I could jump in and say, your staff is doing a fantastic job of
They always
letting us know
Good.
that those are their issues, those are the competing priorities for them. And that was one reason to come in and speak to you, because you do have to wait for this, right?
And projects like this don't happen unless we put ourselves in your shoes, right? And
Okay, appreciate that.
we are thinking through all of those things and thinking about how to leverage funds and strategize, and also getting at what is the worst case scenario. So say like the city paid $5 million for this and the project had no dollars in the game. It would be.
Before you go any further, I didn't agree to any of that.
Understood.
I get in trouble with the rest of the council.
But I was, I talked to Peter and I was like, what is the ratepayer increase of that? And it, you 2 to 3%, right? So compared to other things, maybe less, but it's not nothing, right? And so, what can we do it takes a lot of brain work to make projects anywhere close to as big as Kellogg happen. So, I mean, I feel like we have to explore every opportunity. We have to look at the loan approach and see if we can leverage some funds through that and get some funding for this. And we'll just have to keep, we kind of peel back the banana layer, peel back the layers and just answer one question at a time and then drill in. But right now, I think the work that they're doing to answer some of the questions about capacity on the sewer line, that's going to keep answering those next questions that get us just a little bit further along and then really taking a look at the loan application.
Could I ask Jonathan to address the project funding and your approach to the project funding?
What's up there?
Yeah.
Those dollars, think of how we should use those dollars.
Well, I think I've heard from you. I just would like to surface it.
Yeah, so that's more than the 150, which we've talked about in the past, right? So there's other dollars in there. What I've shared with Councilor Massey and the council in general is that we've held on to those dollars and put our staff time, because we didn't want to add or take away funds that could be better used getting consultant dollars that maybe used in the future for like a sewer line or something along those lines. So that's kind of where I would think those dollars would eventually go at some point, would be through using technical experts or generating capacity through contracts. That's why we haven't touched it. If that's
I
the
think
question.
that what we have done is that we've sort of sucked up, their participation and sort of taken it out of I don't know to describe it. With this as like, we may have to really bring in, the pros from Dover on some particular aspect. And so that's why we wanted to keep that, kind of separate. And if you would, Peter, would you discuss your sort of feelings on the revolving fund?
Yeah, I mean,
Versus and again, we kind of roll this into the big picture of the city's finances, not just this project. Go ahead.
yeah, and just from that affordability perspective, and I know I've mentioned it lots of times, so it's not just the wastewater. We do have, we're looking at some significant increases with the work that we have to do on our water. We have a safe system deficiency that we need to fix. So
This is a safe routes
yes,
to schools and that kind of
yeah. And I should say, over our 6-year period, forecasted period for our CIP, our rate consultant was saying, we put in the Kellogg Dam, it's about a 2.75% increase each year over that 6-year period. So, and I think, so you factor all those in, there's some extensive increases that ratepayers are facing, and we're trying to mitigate those in lots of different ways. One of the big ways that we're doing is we're trying to make sure that we have a really realistic, executable. Ratepayers have paid into the rates to get infrastructure constructed. So I think the other piece that I would say, when we look at these opportunities with these revolving loan funds, we're working with Oregon Business Development Department right now. We have an application in for Safe Drinking Water revolving loan fund. It's our first tranche. That's going to be about a $6 million application. $3 million of that is forgivable, but we still have to pay principal on that other piece. The Clean Water Drinking, Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund. Yes, the whole thing's not forgivable, so there's principal that has to be repaid on that. We really need to weigh what the options are with that opportunity versus the increases on the rates, because there's still a cost associated with it. But it might be a tool that we could certainly use. But also we've looked at, internal borrowing as a source of helping reduce impacts to ratepayers for the work that we do on water. And that would be trying to potentially utilize some of the wastewater reserves to offset future increases there as well.
But that would be reprioritizing projects.
But that would be reprioritized. But it's really sort of just like when you stack up all of the work that we have, like trying to mitigate costs of ratepayers. So when you throw in a $1 million or $5 million project, there's a cost associated, which we're trying to mitigate.
Can I just make sure I understood sort of what April was saying about timeline? If we had it in our CIP by April, which is, we're trying to do our CIP by April anyway.
Yeah,
more or less.
February is when we really try to make some decisions. We want to adopt it until we adopt our budget in June, but
So if we had it and we went for the clean water revolving loan funds, but then by end of 2026 have no federal funding, would we back off? I mean, you say we wouldn't do this absent that, so.
So the application just gets you in the queue. You're not bound to accept the loan if it's awarded. So it just gets you in the queue and then you can make a decision down the road if you want it or not.
I think, and I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the encouragement of like, we wouldn't leave you guys off stranded with this big project, without the big thing. I think, just again, to the kind of reality of a very small engineering team. And so if we're adopting a CIP that says this is a project and we're putting a city project manager on it and putting funds toward it, I think it's helpful, Mary, like kind of when would we sort of have that certainty? Because we've got to deploy those resources. Am I holding back another project until we get that certainty? Sort of when are we subbing in, subbing out? And I really appreciate this project team's always been willing, how can we help? How can we help? And when we say capacity, it's not just like, I need more money to hire more people. It's a very small city trying to manage a CIP and get things, moving. And so I think as we go forward, I would just love to keep exploring, what hats does each part wear? I think that maybe it was an original assumption on our side that this was a project that'd be kind of engineered by the bigger project team and managed by the bigger project team. Maybe there's more a way where that still happens, but with some financial support from the city, or there's we manage it, we fund it. All of those have different impacts on how Peter and Jen staff their team and how we affect our rates. And so I think if this is in the CIP, we'd be adopting a rate increase to pay for it. Then we could always back that off if things change, but that's just some of the trade-offs you might have to be.
And I think one of the consequences, we're trying to scale our CIP to where we can execute it is like the projects are all priority projects. They're not like, there's, downtown, Main streets projects, there's PFAS projects, there's, 2 other pump stations that we need that are in need of repair and rehabilitation that we have. There's Monroe Greenway. So there's lots of projects that are a priority to already, right, that we're trying to get accomplished. So it's not pushing out something that's not important. So that's the challenge.
So part of the scenario analysis and the information we want from the city and looking at all the different scenarios was if the contract for the sewer relocation is going under the Kellogg project or is let some other way, we haven't figured out the feasibility of that or what, but how does this ends up being a city public works, it's city public works infrastructure.
Yeah.
So what input, how does the city control the specs up for someone else's contract? I mean, we're looking at, the feasibility the other way and so the more information we get from you all on what would be needed, what you would have to, what direction you would be providing, what ownership you would have of it under someone else's contract, what an IGA maybe would look like. That's going to allow us to really evaluate, can we do this or not? And then we can say, okay, now we see a pathway for who's wearing what hat and how to make this work.
We're doing something similar on Outer Powell with the city of Portland because the city of Portland, it's an ODOT project or ODOT owns the contract for the contractor, but the city water bureau has been involved and they added funds and oversight, if you will, to the water folks on the design team. So they were providing, because that's not our wheelhouse per se. So they were the ones that we're looking at the designs and providing input and, and then the contract's ours. And so now we've got, them working, our contractor working with them also in the construction phase. But,
Yeah, we don't want a situation where, the project, builds this infrastructure and the Peter, he says,
What?
I don't like it.
right, that's what we don't like.
So we do have another agenda item. Were there other slides that we haven't gotten to that you?
Just this last one is just what's coming up next, so the 6-minute design we covered. Again, I think we really just touched on it, what the, getting, kind of honing into the sort of tension between resource requirements that cost money, to manage the SUP and then versus the benefit of the SUP. So that's something that, is another complex thing for the council to grapple with. Again, we're going to be evaluating contracting options. So again, the more information we get from you all, the more that's data we're putting right into those scenarios to determine the utility of these delivery pathways for sewer relocation. And we didn't even touch on it today, but we can do it in maybe the next update, community enhancement features, because that's still the same trade-offs. That's adding assets, but also costs money to maintain in the long term. So,
Like that last bullet, I think that's something we should connect on and talk about.
yeah. And then the very, very last bullet are, when do you want to do it again? Yeah, so, is this something we should do more frequently? We just want to make sure there's good communication all the way across vertical.
Is there a logical next decision point or accomplishment point that would make sense?
Yeah, we can talk about that more in the leadership team and.
It's not something we need to do monthly or anything like that, but,
Logical milestones that would make sense.
Yeah.
And we're engaging closely with city staff
Yes.
on questions that we have
Yeah.
For them, so.
And I just, again, want to extend my huge appreciation to you guys for taking the time to do this. Again, these wonderful humans that work for me, they get sick of me saying you can't commit to anything without counsel. So it's not their fault, it's my fault. But I think this is really important to have this level of dialogue. I'm leaving you all for 3 months, but I would recommend that before that February CIP conversation, you have another touch point, an in-house touch point, where we can maybe look at the written response from the team. You can kind of weigh in some things here and give some feedback to Jen and Peter on that CIP they're going to present to you. Because again, I think there's going to be some trade-offs, and we'll not be all done in February, but that'll help them. Then you have your February CIP conversation with Budget Committee, and then probably looking to have these folks back March, April, or later. But that, I think, knowing your April kind of deadline is super helpful, I think, for us getting our internal ducks in a row with what we can and can't say we're committing to.
Makes sense.
And knowing by February, we'll allow to actually prepare that.
Yeah.
In time for submittal.
I will leave you with just one other thought, I apologize.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, I've been doing publicly funded projects for 4 years. 4 years and a few months, 4 years essentially. I will say, while there's uncertainty in federal dollars, the best thing that this leadership team is doing is driving decisions forward so that when those come online, you are so far ahead of the pack of everybody else than just, we just have an idea. No, we have a feasible idea with an implementation plan. This is really doable. We know a lot. We know what the risks are, and we are forging ahead. Anytime federal dollars come on board, it's those shelf-ready projects that go first. So we will continue to work with city staff because I think that's the best thing that's going on, is the ability to leverage that NOAA grant.
Can we just burn in to spend that $15 million?
I wanted to quickly ask 2 other questions before we leave.
It
One,
looks like we've got a little more extra time because one of our PDD presenters.
oh, it's not here. Oh, okay. Nobody said anything about the railroad. So is the railroad bridge and trestle all copacetic and we're not anticipating any problems with that?
I wish I could say yes. We have the pinnacle of railroad experts on the Consort team who works very closely with ODOT. Where we are in the railroad process is we're preparing what's called their 30% concept package with the intent of starting the conversation with them. They've seen a graphic of what the project wants to do to create that opening. It's a structural modification. The team also did one other really important thing, and that is our console or structural assessment members, about 5 of them, scaled the bridge, measured everything, and did non-destructive poking testing into the into those supports. So we know the shape. We know the situation of that, and it's not good.
Okay.
So the structural modifications that are being proposed.
Worse than our sewer line.
It's actually a benefit to the railroad. And the other beneficial thing is that the railroad bridge that's down the line a little bit, that was damaged by fire, torched by fire. They're closing that down for a few years, is our understanding. We want to get that from them. So if we can stay on this, timeline.
You're talking about the bridge across the
I'm
Willamette?
talking about the bridge across the Willamette.
Wow.
So they're talking about not having train traffic, which means that there's not rail traffic there, there's not rail traffic here.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic
No, our downtown has no
improvement in
more trains.
constructibility when you don't have to construct while you're dealing with
Yeah, yeah.
rails over it.
Opportunity.
There's our up there road pass.
It just helps us with the business case, the UPR, like, we already have a crappy trestle that we want to improve, and then you don't have trains running on it, like, here's our window.
Oh, I would love to know right away if they confirm that, so please do let me
We're
know.
hoping to talk to them in probably January, maybe February.
My other question is just, and it has nothing to do with the Kellogg project, but since we have Shelley here. Shelley knows also about our Highway 224 project, and I just wondered if everything's on task, on time,
It is, we will come back and do like the final lift paving, next year in the springish. We had to, which you guys may not know, we had to actually reduce scope in paving the entirety of the project because we had a problem on a different project that was in construction that we need to divert that money to. But our region manager found some additional funds, so there will be a Oregon 224 Rusk Part 2, which Karen and her team will be helping us with. They did the first one. So yeah, it will be coming through with another project there to finish up the paving, so the ADA ramps are in, and that project is moving right along.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Oh, they are, okay.
Sorry about that there. This works well though.
Yeah. Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for Did you get your email back? I got your response. Yeah. I shared it with everybody, so. No, I don't know what I was looking at here. All right, folks, let's get going. We need to,
Come to the head of
the table. Yeah. We need to move on. This is a presentation or a conversation with PGE leadership. We have Larry Bechtel, who is the VP of PGE, and Heidi Bell, whose title, whose title I can't remember. Good to see you. Local government affairs. There you go.
Well, thanks for coming us, and apparently the timing was okay, because I was rushing to get from our integrated office center. We had the number of folks early this afternoon, so we're always happy to have and Peter, and we have Cornelius, we have Weston, we have Newburgh.
Yeah.
So we try to encourage folks who want to come and find out how we operate the grid, what it looks like, what happens.
It's a good tour. I have recommended it.
Encourage anybody that has an interest, I'll just say, or is it moving the, I'll say technology?
Where is the center?
Right down in Tualatin.
Okay.
Sherwood Highway. We call it the Brown Building. Nobody knows what it is, but it's
No
not
sign.
there.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But yeah, so just making my way back over here. They had to bring me all the side routes to get across. Yes. But thank you for having it. I know we can have a little bit of an open dialogue. I don't know how much we provided in terms of any kind of slides or anything. Oh,
We're trying to get them up.
okay. Thank you.
No jokes.
So,
Yeah, well, that's, I can tell you about Larry.
yeah.
Well, they wrote a little thing for me.
Maybe just a little background. So yes, Senior Vice President for Advanced Energy Delivery in our strategy. I've been with Portland General Electric for 11 years now. Prior to that, I ran transmission for Bonneville. So, system which is 75% of the transmission across the Northwest. And the origins of all that, plays into, kind of some of the things that we're doing now. But also, prior to that, I was with Clark Public Utilities, so in Vancouver, Washington, Public Utility District there. And then prior to that, with Pacific Corp, kind of all over the Northwest. Spent a little time in with the Japanese utility on an exchange program, a sister city and sister state, if you will, Toyama with Oregon. And so it was a great adventure for me. You think you're good, and then you go see others. And then you kind of are humbled and you figure out, okay, how do we do things better? And so it's been a life journey for me. And I've been a student in the grid as well. And so it's been great to learn about it, but also to find out how our communities think about grid and how you all are planning for and thinking about the future. We need that input as we work together in partnership. So that's what we're hoping to do a little bit here tonight. And I think we still maybe.
I think he's got you up now.
Yeah, what's that? It's kind of disturbing.
Yeah, I found this picture. Are you guys familiar with this picture? It's so neat, isn't it? It's surging right out of the river here.
Oh, that's the Milwaukie picture. What?
Yeah, you can kind of, yeah, it's just Klein Point.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
Like Magikarp on it.
Yeah.
I keep.
So you'll have to forgive me.
You know,
I had to pick between certain pictures and I thought that one rose to my own.
It's huge.
It's huge.
Well, I took my brother-in-law, he's from Albuquerque, and went up fishing in the Columbia down from the Bonneville Dam, and sure enough, we got into 45 minutes. And it was 10 foot long, about 300 pounds.
Wow.
Not quite that big, but, they just come up and roll on their stomach or their backs, and you rub their stomachs, take the hook out, and let them go. And they're huge. I mean, it's just amazing to think. And then they get those sturgeon balls underneath at the bottom of the dam. They see them, via, thermal graphics, but these big balls down at the bottom where they somehow huddle up the sturgeon. And
Oh.
there'll be these big balls, just fascinating. Anyway, prehistoric, something really unique about it. So, all right. Well, thank you. And maybe I should get the grade. I'm going to be giving the IOC tour. Sorry. So, yeah, a few statistics, that you see there. And I think about the residential and the commercial and the industrial. Had an opportunity to speak with the mayor and my city manager the other day. Again, what is the growth? What is the property?
See the air?
Yeah.
Happy Valley. Yeah, you know where we're going next.
Oh, no.
Okay, they're Eagleton, we're Pawnee. We get it.
But, we, look at, things of nature of, look at Milwaukie, as it grows and as it thinks about, fill in, the industries that you have, the industries that leave, you want back in, and really how you build out the community here. we have been experiencing a lot of growth throughout the Willamette Valley. And it's, you know, everybody wants to draw to data centers. And I'm gonna set that aside for a minute, we'll come back to it. But when you think of the normal growth, which used to be about less than 1% for many, many years, 25, 30 years. And I have to admit, I've been in this industry that long, so you really didn't see a lot of growth. And the energy efficiency came along, and we kept things flat. And then heat pumps came along. You know, we started off with how we use. Also, a heat pump came along in summer of 2021. We recall it was 115 degrees here. And that year, we flat. And what I mean by that is you could see a normal picture of load coming up in the morning, and you normally peak out before in the afternoon and then starts to come back down again. And that particular day it went up, and hit the ceiling and went flat. Which means there was really nothing else to turn on. Everybody had their fans, whatever they could get. And so the next year, it's only 96 degrees in the summer, we hit the same load. Because everybody bought air conditioning. They went out and bought whatever they could get their hands on, and so it was a 10% increase over here. I share that as to say, in depending on climate, we all adapt, we all think differently. Glad to see the heat pumps come along. We also see electric transportation come along. I don't know how your sense is, but I was very disappointed with the $20 billion write-off. But at the same time, electric vehicles, we've also seen just again use, and as people think about how they use electricity in their applications, again, we love seeing the energy efficiency. It's all LED lights. Christmas time, we get better shows with LED lights for a lot less energy. And so it's been really exciting to see, but that growth went from less than 1% to 2.5% to 3%. Just with what we've seen in normal usage patterns across the system. Then data centers came along. And what I'll say about data centers, you hear about the hyperscaling, the large learning models, the 1 gigawatt type facilities that equate to things like opening up a 3 mile lab. The Tri-Cities, they're putting in small modular reactors in the Tri-Cities area. So folks like Amazon, Microsoft, these big balance sheets are going in doing this. We don't have that type here. So when we talk about Hillsborough, it's still a co-location. Right? They tend to be buildings that are 100 megawatt type building. And I referenced the aluminum industry of the last century because these sound a lot like that. And when we built the transmission, we've been World War II, and the aluminum industry coming in. By the early 70s, we had the transmission we built with. Since very little was built after that. But again, slow growth. And then all of a sudden you have data centers come in. And like a Hillsborough, where a box is 100 megawatts, it's like a aluminum plant, they had 5 pot lines in there. You could actually turn pot lines down to help the grid when you could operate. Data centers, do they have the flexibility? We're finding out they do. They can. And so we're doing a lot of work with either their backup generation or their ability to change what they're processing. They can actually change what their load is. They can move it from, say, Hillsborough to North Carolina. Why not? If we're in that situation. And so we'll talk a little bit about UM 2377, some of the issues in know you wrote a letter. We'll dive into that a little bit. We want those that are causing pay for it. Yeah, growth, if you will. And that's much like the aluminum industry. They paid for that transmission back last century. And we're all reaping the benefits of that today. But it's full. So the aluminum industry left in the 90s. The chip manufacturers came along. We've filled it in, both residential, small commercial, and the industrials. So that system that we lived on, pretty darn full. We will talk about how we try to get every megawatt we can out of the existing. But there's going to have to come a point where we need to reconnect. We need to change voltages on existing. I'm the first to admit, and I know I mentioned to the mayor that the Boardman to Hemingway transmission line that's underway today, finally under construction, 21 years after its origin, it takes forever to try to build a new line. And so existing lines, existing routes, we have to get the most out of them we can. So that's where I'll spend my time. I can't wait 21 years. I don't think I have that much of a career left. Wait 21. So I mentioned those things to say the system is changing. The dynamics of the system are changing. We talk about, again, storms, extreme weather, cyber attacks, earthquake, some Cascadia, subductionary earthquake. All of these emergencies, if you will, weather attacks, et cetera, that we're trying to think, how do you get resiliency? How do you gain, the sort of reliability in the system that we need? Because we are all dependent on this commodity. And it's really important for us to maintain that resiliency. And so we're trying to dig in each of these areas and say, how do we harden this? Our assets are old. And in many cases, we asked the Engineering Society, they gave us a D- because of the age of our assets. And like bridges here, we all know that it's going to take a lot to reinforce and but there are some things that we're doing in resiliency. Batteries is number one. We've now installed 500 megawatts worth of batteries. 200 megawatts in the Troutdale area, 200 megawatts in the St. John's area, 75 megawatts in the Hillsborough area right now. Then there's some smaller ones that are spread. And so that's 10% of our peak capacity. But really what it does is it gives us flexibility that we haven't had. We've had a little bit of in the hydro. Grand Coulee for the Northwest is kind of the one reservoir that holds a significant amount of water. Many of the other dams are run of the river. So that just means they're passing through. You don't get to hold a lot. But batteries give us the ability to hold the electrons. And that's new for us. Industry. Gas industry had storage. They had pipelines. Put things in tanks. So now what we're going to do is take the wind, the solar, when it's operating, hold it into a battery, and then utilize it in the system to make it. A great example of that is California. California put in 17 gigawatts now of batteries. So we're a 4.5 gigawatt system. They've got 17 gigawatts of batteries. California's 52 gigawatts, so more than 10 times what PGE is in terms of our size. A few years ago in the summer, you had what they called the duck. In the morning, normally loads would come up. That's when the sun would come up. So they were generating more off the solar than their load. So you see their loads fall off. Then when the evening came, the loads shoot up because the sun went down and generation went away. And so in the midday, they were selling it, basically giving us or paying us to take the excess energy they had. And then in the evening, they were buying everything they could get from us because they didn't have enough to keep them going in the evening. And So an economy can't stay that way. And so they finally put the batteries in, and that duct curve now is flattened out. What used to cost $1,000 to $2,000 a megawatt hour in the summertime, this last 2 summers, it was $150. So, technology, I just share that to say technology can really help us. Make it a price down, it's done right. And that's what we hope to do with the team. We show here modernizing, we also talk about the resiliency. So, we want to get the most out of the system that we have. And again, try to keep it affordable. Wildfire certainly has been on everybody's mind. The urban areas, Milwaukie, still there's concerns, but not quite the same, other than I'll just lead on to like a forest park. There's a huge park next to urban areas and not a lot different than LA. What we saw in LA fire. Once they get started in the homes, they're jumping from home to home. It's next to impossible. So how do we think about it as communities? How do homes, standards of homes, buildings of homes, how do we consider wildfire? But one of our best preventions has been public safety power shutoffs. So Mount Hood, I didn't believe in it prior to the Labor Day of 2020. I grew up in Montana. Douglas fir was, you had wildfires and you controlled and you just knew that it was going to happen. But never had seen what the damage it could do. And so Labor Day of 2020, we turned off Mount Hood. And that was a hard decision. I'm not the one that wants to turn it off. We had to make that decision. But it was the best decision we ever made. Because the fires that took place, as you saw further south, were devastating. And when we went back up into those communities, trees were down on top of everything. And we know pretty well we would have had the same sort of. So, we learned our lesson, but how do we do that in a really controlled fashion, by science, giving us the best determination to do that quickly? I turn real quickly to, what is our energy, and 45% non-emitting. There's 13% on top of that that's quote unquote, we treat it as if it is carbon emitting because we don't know. We're buying it, it's coming out of California. Even though it might be coming from solar, we don't know that for sure. We have to claim it as being emitting. So we're trying to get better and better at that. We know exactly where it's coming from. Just paint the electrons, which one's green and which one's worse. But this is our picture today, and we're trying to take advantage of the tax credits, projects that are trying to, get into the, we're actually going to call it here, to meet the timelines, because that's a 30% reduction in the cost of that generation if we meet those tax. So that's being worked on as we speak, and you have to have certain things done and finished by end of year, plus by, I believe it's July 1st. So there's a lot of work, but we're really pressing the advantage of those tax credits.
Sorry to interrupt. How long is we're scheduled to stop?
Well, we're scheduled to stop now, but you got 10 minutes late start, so we'll give you 10 more
A little
minutes.
bit more. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Affordability. So this is the one that I think probably really focusing a lot of attention on. And I know my boss, Leah, we had a discussion about how do we keep residential rates at or below inflation. And we made the mistake of waiting through COVID, not doing any rate increases, and then we hit an 18%, which lit a storm. Nobody was happy. All 51 of our cities wrote letters to commissioners, and you included them. We know that's not a good solution. So you're better off doing small increments over time. And so that's what we're working And we'll go further into the data center piece, because I know that's important. But before I jump to that, I do want to talk about the IB, so this is our program to income qualified, there we go, bill discount. So those individuals that are eligible based on their income, be it fixed income, member elderly needs program, but also low income. And so what we're trying to do is encourage those customers to take advantage. And you can see numbers there, 72% of your households that are eligible are taking advantage of it right now. And, but there's something on the order of 1,300 that are still eligible that aren't enrolled. So I want to encourage that. Those individuals to be able to take.
Is this 72% of eligible? Okay. Because that just says 72% of Milwaukie households.
Yeah.
They're enrolled
Enrolled.
out of.
Yeah.
If I went back to the residential, we had about 10,000. So that gives you 30%.
72% is a pretty darn good number compared to some of the others that I see. So I have room to grow, of course. One of the things that Matt and I are working on too is getting out more information via your newsletter.
We're also, in terms of affordability, this year, we've taken on our customer affordability commitment. We've cut our expenses by 25 million. We've cut another 30 million next year. Not easy decisions.
Cut them from what?
From our cost, our O&M cost.
Oh, okay.
So our operating costs, we've made those commitments. And not easy. Involved some layoffs this year. First time, at least in 11 years that I've been here. Contractors are impacted. Trying to release them free. Well, we're trying to make sure that every dollar spending. And so those are hard decisions at times. I know you were having to face that as well. And every dollar counts. Just know that we're working on that as well. So the last one, did want to say, because I know we sent in letter commission on UM 2377, which is data center. And we, through the last legislative session, created, working with legislative, a separate class for data centers. So we didn't have that before, so that was created, which then we can have a separate rate with them. And we're also, as I mentioned earlier, the cost causation. So figuring out, number one, you're impacting the system, how do we make sure that you're paying? Two, if you decide, because in some years this is just a way, they might come in for a few years and then boom, they're gone, and we end up with stranded assets. So how are we making sure that we cover those costs? That all the rest of the customers are not paying for something that they left behind. And then finally, it's I'll say the rate structure itself. There have been some articles here recently talking about 3 years versus 50 years. 3 years is in line with the Fair Act that was passed. We can't file for rates. And when we do, we have an 18-month period before, so lots of input, et cetera. But to try and line up with that, we have a rolling 3 years. So in case you take the assets that have been put in, the depreciation, you take it out, and effectively you then look at the loads that have come on, and you spread those costs according to those loads. So as data centers come on, they pick up more and more of that as they bring their load to the table. So each year, in line with the Fair Act, you have a 3-year rolling review that's going to be happening. So we anticipate that residential is going to see possibly even slightly declining rates, where you're going to see data centers coming in at like 25% rate increase. So I share that with you is to say that this is effectively shifting because of their loads. Transmission, they already paid for the substations, they already paid for the distribution fees. What's difficult at times is to take the transmission and pull it apart, because we are a network. And between ourselves, Pacific Core, and Bonneville, we're all intertwined. But we can, if you're doing it on a load increase basis, you can take those costs, you can spread them appropriately, and then they can share them. So it kind of gets back to, as I mentioned, the aluminum industry, the last century paying for it. When we nice to have the data centers pay for it now, and we have that benefit for many years to come. So that's what's being proposed in the UM 2377. Your letter was well timed. Getting word into commissioners and saying, look, make sure these folks are paying for they cost.
And are they actively pushing back?
Not actively. They come back with, we want it to be fair. What's important to them is that they get hooked up fast.
Yeah.
And a megawatt for them is anywhere from 30 to 40 million. And now, if I can squeeze a megawatt out of our system, and you may have seen some articles where we're doing some hourly studies, we're using AI to computation to really dig in and analyze how much more can we get out of the system. So we found that we could get 80 megawatts more out of piece in the neighborhood of the Hillsborough. Think about that, 80 megawatts, that means $30 to $40 million per megawatt. It's really important. But for us then, collecting the revenue, not having to put any additional in to get that 80 megawatts means, we're able to bring the revenue and spread that across without the increased cost for everybody. So we can drive the revenues, the rates for everybody down. So that's what we're trying to work. And we want to be smart about it. But also know that our communities, okay? We're at Candy, we're at Apollo, we're at Wilsonville, growing, and we've got to build a system. We want to make sure that they pay for those portions. Data centers today, not pushing back too heavily on that 25%. Okay.
Business must be good.
That's all we look at and help. We're just more than happy to have you help us, to build up. That's really what.
I'd like to ask you a few questions about the 3-year period. My day job, I work down in the legislature, and I'm involved in helping negotiate the final push for the Power Act. And I can say legislative intent there was really to cover full costs of additional infrastructure that these systems require. Can you just speak a little bit more about what happens after that 3-year period? I appreciate the fair.
Every 3 years, you do the same thing. You can do it on an annual basis. What we propose now is 3 years. Let's go to 10 years. So work your way to 10 years and keep that weighted average going through that. So again, from a rates perspective, you go back and review. Okay, their load grew more, so they get to pay more. I mean, that's how you try to spread those costs. And, but it doesn't end at 3 years. I think that's the misnomer that's kind of floating around. people think, oh, they paid their 3 years, that's it. No. Each review it at your next cycle and the next cycle.
What gets reviewed though? I'm sorry.
How much of the share that how much their load is increasing, so how much they're paying on that. And so they pay on the entire system, it's like all other customers. So even though the transmission, which again, it's kind of fuzzy, I can't say that it's from point A to point B that you caused, unless it was a radial feed. And I can think of one in Prineville where we built to Facebook, and it was just to their site. That's pretty easy, it's clean. But when it's the backbone network here that's being used by everybody, it's harder to differentiate that. But if you take the total cost, the new capital, and you look at how much they're using, apply that against it. Very reasonable. It looks like, they might pick up 70–80%. For all work, whether it was done for them specifically, if you will, or for the community like Milwaukie that needs the 57 converted to 15 kV. I know there's a lot in that, but if you want, we can provide more information on and the proposals, because these are all proposals. So it goes in this Friday is the next round, and we hope that we can move the ball forward with the commission on seeing that, okay, they're paying the majority. Now, if you ask for too much and they go away, okay, that's one view, but that just means you don't put the system at all. I mean, then we have to pick up all costs.
We also have a person who has offered to come out and have a rate discussion with the council.
Maybe we do that and you follow up in writing. We can.
Sure.
A lot of this will go over my head. You're the energy expert. I just know that it is really important that we're making these data centers pay their fair share.
Agreed.
And it is DPG too. So, but the person, name is Jackie. Set that up with the mayor.
Great, other questions people have?
Yeah, I have a couple. So you mentioned that the rates would for people, not for regular consumers, not the data centers, but would flatline and potentially dip. Is that with the data centers paying their fair share?
That's the reason.
So would we anticipate, almost 50% increase over the next 5 years on consumers, like the last 5 years it was? Or no? Like, how are you guys gonna?
Yeah, that's why.
The residential, yes.
Again, our commitment is to keep residential below inflation. So, right, you're gonna be at 50%.
Okay. My other question is, I noticed that when there's severe weather, storms or issues, when infrastructure gets damaged, ratepayers end up paying the repair. Because like my bill jumped like $70 in 1 month because of the damage that some of the windstorms and some of the ice storms caused. It's like there's an increase on the ratepayers to repair that. But well, my question is this: why are we paying for it anyways? When don't you guys have a budget for these issues? Like, why are we getting increases on those?
It's still, yeah, $70.
Let me look at, I'm happy to have you.
Yeah, that was a.
Yeah. But it's, you're right. The cost, we set budget aside for the storm. We work with the commission to say, okay, let's take an average of the year. And we do have so if you have a bad storm, hopefully we have enough there to cover. But if we don't, if we've already spent, like you had 4 storms in 1 year, then you'll go over. Then you're going back and you're asking for recovery. That's what, you get an average each year, but and if you don't use it, it carries over to the next year. And then, hopefully that pays. But if you're wrong in your estimations of how many storms you're gonna have, having to come back and ask for more.
But how come the company itself doesn't make that up? And like, why do they put on ratepayers when the company's clearing like,
Where we get our income.
you guys are
It's
clearing over,
water and sewer.
right, but you're clearing over 300 million net profit.
Not the
What?
profit necessarily.
That's your shareholder
Profit,
packet.
yes.
It's net
I'll
profit.
just say there's a lot of,
Gross, you guys did over 2 billion.
the investors are investing, typically retirees who are expecting a return.
Well, I know how it works. I understand capitalism, but at the end of the day, to have to make the ratepayers responsible financially for storms that we don't have control over, when you guys are making that amount of excessive money, it just, you know, it doesn't, you're trying to do the right thing. I mean, that's something that you could do that would make a big difference for
I
people.
mean, you're right, when we manage at a 9% return. Don't get to make any more. That's, you know, anything above that goes back. Our retained earnings all go back in the system. So I hear what your point is, which is, okay, if the system fails, how can people have to pay for it? Whether force majeure happens, why do people have to pay? Well, somebody has to pay.
I know, I understand that. I just find it funny that we have to pay for it when you guys are pocketing over 300 million. That's what I'm saying. That's just that's a lot of money in one year.
Raise capital to build the system that we have.
Well, it's also to pay your shareholders too.
Correct. I get it. And the return is managed at 9%.
Because see, the issue I have too is, you know, a city like ours, which is small, which is restricted on where we can get our income and our financing. For example, we had to do something to avoid raising it directly on our ratepayers. We had to increase our right-of-way fees, right? And, you know, we've been good partners with PGE for quite some time. And unfortunately, a letter was sent out to all of our residents, you know, saying that we have to, that you guys, PGE, the company, has to increase all of our residents' bills by the amount that the city was increasing the right-of-way fee. And it kind of threw us under the bus. And I felt like, well, that's not a little fair, because at the end of the day, we're restricted on how we can earn money too. You guys have that 9%, but that 9% grows year over year because of inflation, right? So that 9% stays steady, but the dollar amount goes up. I mean, it does. In 2023, you guys made how much did you clear you made just under 300 million. So you guys are earning more and more each year. You're making more and more money. So my question is, what would it have hurt to not put that increase on customers and eat that? How much of that would have costed, how much would it have cost PGE to swallow that increase as opposed to pass it on to our customers?
You mean the right-of-way?
The right-of-way fee increase, yeah.
Oh.
It was about a $5 on average, $5 increase on people's bills. So you take the households and you do the math, it doesn't sound like it's that much. I would figure if you wanted to do the right thing, maybe swallowing costs like that would help too, instead of passing it on to the residents. And I know you guys aren't responsible for this. It's just, you know, it's a company. Like, you guys are a corporation. You guys are shareholders. You're managed and right. It is a public utility. Well, yeah, of course. I understand that. But you guys are a public utility. Well, not that you're a corporation. So you're managed as a utility in terms of how the jurisdiction and what rules you have to follow. But you're still a corporation, right? So the bottom line is still profit. The bottom line is still shareholders and making them happy, right? So
versus the public. The only difference is access to capital. Bring enough capital. You're trying to attract, and without that 90%, you don't attract. That's kind of the fundamental thing. And I hate to say it, but I know my own parents and grandparents all kind of relied on that dividend to carry them through their retirement.
I get that.
But I'll just say, access to capital is really capital intensive. much like the city, now you get into the, you've got water and sewer systems, they're expensive. And rebuilding them, replacing, expanding them, costs. But somebody, in order to get dollars to pay for the water.
So I think.
We don't run on profit though. We don't operate for profit. That's the difference. We don't operate for profit.
I hate to shut things off, but we do have people coming in for the next meeting and we have to have a little break before we go up there. But I had intended to ask you guys about green tariff and a few other things, and, sort of climate stuff. But I will send my questions in writing.
We can also come back.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and I invite counselors to do the same if you have questions.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Writing.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You didn't say we're adjourned?
Oh, we are adjourned. Guy that goes to the.
There we go.
No gavel.